Good afternoon. I'm Julianne Polanco. I have the honor and the pleasure of being your State Historic Preservation Officer, a role that I have held for 9 years now. Every year it gets complex and different, and the one thing I think that is always the most important is that we're working together with our federal agencies, state agencies, and our partners in our communities, our tribal nations, to make sure that we have a world that is interesting and thriving for all. It's wonderful that you're able to join us today, both in person and virtually. I'm pleased to be live streaming this so that people throughout the state can join us, and we hope we're having watch parties. So hi, everybody in the virtual world. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. I want to express our gratitude to State Librarian Greg Lucas for sharing this lovely room in the historic Stanley Mosque Library and Courts building. It was constructed in 1922. Classic Greek Revival style building was designed by Weeks and Day of San Francisco. The decorative elements are made from Sierra white granite quarried in Madera County and terracotta from Gladys McBean in Lincoln. The room we are gathered in today was originally designed as a courtroom for the Supreme Court, though they never actually met in this room. It was referred to as the attic room at the time and apparently wasn't very desirable. The ceiling paintings reflect people and events from California history, including the only known seal of the state of California depicting the bear eating grapes. In 2013, the building experienced a major rehabilitation that restored historic features and artwork throughout, some of which had been hidden for years behind modern alterations. Today, the library stands as a testament to the value and importance of saving our treasured resources. We are always delighted to be in this room. It is my pleasure to introduce the Director of California State Parks, Armando Quintero. We always appreciate the Director's time in being with us for this event, his support for the Office of Historic Preservation, and the active role that California State Parks plays in celebrating and commemorating our shared rich history as the stewards of hundreds of historic buildings, cultural landscapes, archaeological properties, throughout the state park system. And now, Armando, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I was born and raised in California, and I've been in this role for a little over 3.5 years, and it's something that I never even dreamed. So it's a real pleasure to be with all of you. I ran over here from my office. I've got a little bit of a wheeze going. I'd really like to extend a warm welcome to City Council member, is Sohelia Bana, is she here? Pardon me? Oh, okay, who will be here. Also, I'd like to welcome the board members, preservation commissioners, and the city staff members who've gathered to celebrate the award recognition centered in their communities. We also extend a warm welcome to Carmen Lucas. Is Carmen here? Oh, okay. Hello. Oh, I recognize you. Carmen is the elder of the Quaimi, is that how I say this? The Quaimi Laguna Band of Indians, and we have met and we've spoken. And I remember that conversation. It was at Sutter's Fort when I first met you, and it was a very powerful. It's a very powerful conversation. I really deeply appreciated that. She herself was a recipient of the Governor's Historic Preservation Award in 2017. I'm especially pleased to be here today to recognize and to congratulate the projects and the organizations that succeeded in their endeavors because of the collective dedication to preserving our state's treasured heritage. As Julie noted in her remarks, historic preservation is the work and mission of the Office of Historic Preservation and is a key component of California's state parks. I don't know if you realize how large the state park system is, and I'm actually going to add a few things that are not in here. But state park system includes 53 historic parks and monuments, 22 cultural preserves, 13,000 recorded California Native American ancestral and archaeologic sites, over 2,000 historic structures, and more than 5 million artifacts and archival documents, from indigenous baskets to historic photographs and even antique railroad cars. Within state parks, there are many initiatives to steward historic and cultural heritage for our communities today and for the future. The first of these initiatives is advancing preservation in the face of climate change. something that we've all had a lot of different bites of in the last few years. The first of these initiatives is advancing preservation in the face of climate change, of course. And what we're doing here is building capacity to better address fire threats and improving emergency response and recovery efforts. We're also conducting fire and survey damage assessments on the status of previously listed historic properties, like those of the CZU complex, CZU complex lightning fire at Big Basin Redwood State Parks. Big Basin is the oldest, it was the first state park established in California. And that fire in 2020 burned the entire park and all of the buildings, a brand new visitor center, brand new archive center to the ground. And the only thing that was left standing that was human built was one house that had a sprinkler system on the roof. But one of the things that also happens when these big fires rage through California and in really any landscape is those fires end up revealing a very detailed picture of the human history of these areas that extends back for hundreds of generations. So at the Big Basin fire, we had a number of people who came through to document ancestral Native American sites, and there were also revelations with regards to mining and lumber industries and other associated settlements. Another thing that we're experiencing because of climate change is of course, sea level rise, and we're getting more extreme storm events. And the story of people in California extends back to a time when the ocean was more than 300 feet shallower than it is today. And some of the first people that came to California actually were along the coast, or many of the early people who were in California were living along the coast where freshwater streams entered the ocean. And for those of you who are familiar with the San Francisco coastline, the Farallon Islands was actually the coast of California a little over 10,000 years ago. And as the sea level has risen, it has inundated places where people lived for many years. And today, as the sea level continues to rise, and when we get really strong storms, what it's doing is actually impacting historic sites all along the coast. So we're looking at state parks and how we can better protect those areas with the impacts of sea level rise. The Office of Historic Preservation, in continuing its collaboration with UC San Diego's Department of Anthropology and the Scripps Research Institute, is also working to create a climate vulnerability site framework that engages tribes and communities to integrate cultural knowledge cultural knowledge into the work that we're putting into climate solutions. Another initiative that we're doing at state parks is called Reexamining Our Past. And through this program, we are working collaboratively with tribes across California and submitting replacement names for places that have the SQ name. That's being done nationally. But we're also working with tribes to identify areas where there are names that really are, frankly, inappropriate for these sites based on the history and the impact on the indigenous people of California. A good example of that is Sume, which is up on the north coast in the world of the Yurok. And what's interesting is when State Parks works with the Commission and the public, and we do a name change for a place like Sume, the Department of Transportation ends up changing the place names as well. So what happens with the work in state parks is actually affecting more than the footprint of state parks. Through the Tribal Lands Acknowledgements work that we are doing, we're expanding and creating a much more inclusive effort in terms of interpretation and exhibits. We're conducting consultations through partnerships which prioritize the needed changes, replacements, and updates to interpretation exhibits throughout the state. This includes programming, training for interpreters and docents who are working with school programs and the public. And I'll also say that what we are doing is very intentionally seeking people who want to work for state parks, who have cultural knowledge, who've been raised in these communities, who speak the language, who practice ceremony, and can tell the stories for the real people they are. That's what we should be doing. actually I'll mention also this, working with our, I'm going to call our HR department, working with our people and cultures department, we are looking at how job descriptions are written. And by looking at that, we can change the requirements that will get the job done, but also acknowledges the experiences that people have in California, whether it's working with the Conservation Corps or working for some other entity or having been members of a tribe where they have continually been practicing things like applying fire to landscapes. So we're working in ways so that we can acknowledge that knowledge that helps people qualify for these positions to be able to work in the land management departments in California from one end to the other. Through the African American History and Engagement projects, we are working in partnership with CAM, which is the California African Museum, and we are working to prioritize park locations for researchers and Black communities to bring together the stories of Black Americans. And we've identified over 24 state parks where there are clearly stories of these communities who have lived there, but they're not well represented in either the stories or the exhibits. And we were able to get some significant funding from the legislature a few years ago, and we are actively pursuing that with CAM. And also, the Office of Historic Preservation has multiple property documented forms which are underway. And as the name implies, it's really an important move in efficiency in being able to get whole neighborhoods, whole categories of buildings into the historic, under the Historic Preservation Office recognition, which helps in many ways, and that way you don't have to take 20 steps to take what really can take just one step by doing this work. And so some of these areas include the Native Americans and California Mission System document, a document from the tribal experience, which was approved in 2023 by the keeper of the National Register of Historic Places. The second part of the Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in California document, which is also nearing completion. The development of an African Americans in California multiple property documents form, which is also underway. And each of these efforts include a community-derived advisory committee to provide local knowledge or stories and sites that are important to each of these themes. In the Parks Director's office, there's a special assistant, and his name is Jason McCannell. And he has been working for some time now in developing an online atlas of the indigenous people of California. And you can think of this atlas as being a bunch of layers that has the maps of the languages of over 90 languages have been were spoken in California. Many of those languages are still alive. And it's interesting because, we always talk about languages relative to foreign languages, but in California, I like to say that we have 90 domestic languages. And you're seeing those languages appear in state parks, in the exhibitry, and also in the languages and the words that are being spoken there. We recognize that preserving our heritage cannot be left to any one state department alone and is often too great for governmental agencies combined. So we have to be working with communities to do this work. And preservation's greatest strength and successes come from the citizens of all backgrounds, joining together to protect, sustain, and share California's rich heritage. I was talking this morning with Jason McCannell, the fellow who I mentioned, and the California Native American Heritage Commission actually has some really important documents on their site for any of those of you who might be interested. And some of those are, one of them that I read recently, it's about a 9-page history of California from the perspective of indigenous people. And certainly 9 pages doesn't cover it. But what you find when you read that document is rather than, for example, referring to Coloma as the site of a big gold rush level of activity, he talks about the 3 militias that were based in Coloma when we first became a state. And those militias, their only purpose was actually to extirpate indigenous people. So when you read this paper, it creates a completely different map of our history. And that's part of our job, is to bring this forward. But for those of you certainly in Native American community, this atlas is intended for you. And it's not telling your story, it's putting information together that allows more information for the stories that you tell of the people from the region from which you are and came. So it is the recognition of this strength and spirit that is the guiding purpose behind our presentation of the Governor's Historic Preservation Awards, something we've proudly done since 1986. And these awards are designed to honor the accomplishments of individuals and community-based groups throughout California, each of which has worked to preserve the aspects of heritage that it most values. Excuse me just a moment. You know, I've been talking a lot, so I'm just gonna get right to introducing Julie. But I've read the stories on the people who are gonna be recognized and the work that's gonna be recognized today. And I'm gonna be here for the rest of the event, so I look forward to talking with you. And thanks so much for being here today.
And you can see why we are so pleased that Armando is our director. He brings such thoughtfulness and heart to his position, and I think has really changed the face of California state parks in his very short time with us in really monumental ways, to be more welcoming, to be more inclusive, and to be sure we're telling all the stories of the people of California. We really appreciate you being with us, Armando. I'd like to sincerely thank the independent jury who aided us in the review of the nominations. Lee Adams, who is one of our State Historical Resource Commissioners from Sierra County, Cindy Heitzman, the Executive Director of the California Preservation Foundation, and Kira Williams, a graduate student in Urban Planning and Heritage Conservation from the University of Southern California. Lee, Cindy, and Kira provided thoughtful and informed recommendations that were central to selecting the outstanding preservation efforts that we honor today. And we thank that jury very much. I wanted to say that we started a couple of years ago to think about how we comprise this jury and who we invited, and we had an idea that we were missing youth. So now we've made it a regular thing, to ask the preservation communities and our tribal communities to recommend a young person to serve on our jury. And we're really very pleased that to have that layer of history from their perspective, looking at what we're talking about and telling us what's important to them. I'd also like to recognize our wonderful partners who are responsible for the lovely frames for the awards and the refreshments we'll enjoy later: the California Preservation Foundation, San Francisco Heritage, and the LA Conservancy. We cannot, I've lost a page, excuse me. The Office of Historic Preservation has overseen these awards since 1986 under Governor Duke Majan, 38 years. And since the inception, the Governor's Awards are distinguished from other preservation awards in two important ways. They emphasize active involvement and participation by community groups, and they also recognize a broad array of preservation activities, from buildings to rehabilitation to archaeology, tribal cultural resources, interpretation, and preservation planning. The award gives praise to hundreds of private individuals, organizations, and public agencies who do a wide array of important preservation work throughout the state, who are our valued partners and trusted allies in making sure that the stories of all of our communities are present so that we can all learn, share, and grow together. I'd now like to introduce our Deputy SHPO, Jody Brown. Jody's been with our office now just shy of a year, and we couldn't be more happy to have her with us. She also serves as our tribal liaison. She's a wealth of knowledge and just a delight to work with, and she will be here to give short presentations for each of the awards. After the presentation, the recipients of the awards will be asked to come up to accept the certificate and take a group photo. At that time, a spokesperson will be offered the opportunity to say some remarks, and then we'll move to the next presentation. So Jody, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. For those of you who are accepting awards, I just wanted to ask you, if you come up to the stage, if you could use that staircase over there. That would be really handy. So, all right. Let me get myself set up here. All right. 2023 turned out to be an extraordinary year for the Governor's Historic Preservation Awards, with a higher number of nominations than experienced in the recent past. This year's nominations included innovative technology, groundbreaking documentation, dedicated organizations, and successful adaptive reuse. Okay, it's not going. There we go. Successful adaptive reuse projects, such as that represented by the first award recipient, the Historic Shipyard at Pier 70 Rehabilitation Project. The Shipyard project encompasses the architectural adaptive reuse of a half-dozen historic buildings in a specially designated historic district known as 20th Street Historic Buildings at Pier 70. The 7-acre site in San Francisco's Dog Patch neighborhood was once home to Bethlehem's Shipbuilding, one of the largest ship repair yards on the West Coast. The rehabilitation project was part of a public-private partnership using federal historic tax credit incentives. Project objectives were twofold: rehabilitate deteriorated existing construction and accommodate new interior architectural concepts within the highly complex and diverse structures. Throughout the complex, the architect and developer worked to preserve as much historic material as possible, as well as maximize daylighting and views throughout. Other historic features included gantry cranes, pendant lighting fixtures, inlaid tile flooring, and hardwood detailing, which were restored and emphasized. Existing structural columns, beams, trusses, and walls were left natural and unpainted, or protected with transparent coatings when needed. The new structural and architectural elements clearly stand out in compatible contrast to the historic ones. Through this project, the history of San Francisco's waterfront industry has been preserved and revived, and new life introduced into the 20th Street Historic District, opening Pier 70 to the community once again. The Historic Shipyard at Pier 70 Rehabilitation Project is presented with a 2023 Governor's Historic Preservation Award. If you'd like to say something.
On behalf of Orton Development, the developer who I work for, Marcy Wong, Don Logan, our architect, preservation architecture, our historic consultant, Mark Holbert here, our partner, the Port of San Francisco, the City of San Francisco, and the Office of Historic Preservation. As you all know, there's many other partners, including the National Park Service on a tax credit project, community leaders, and others. It's an honor to receive this award. It was a labor of love, very much for everyone involved. Eddie Orton has a history of doing these types of projects at the highest level. He committed to this, and we delivered, we believe, is a beautiful part of San Francisco's waterfront history. James Madsen and others, are part of that team, also contributed greatly. Mark, if you have any.
And Everardo Mora. Everardo and I we're very engaged on a daily basis in the transformation of this industrial heritage. And yet again, I want to really announce the idea makers behind this, which was Mr. Eddie Orton, who's the developer of this, and it really was his idea and his commitment to this enormous endeavor. Please see it if you haven't. It is a public part of San Francisco. I mean, I grew up in the East, but moved to San Francisco long ago. And in the interim, this facility has been derelict until finally it got picked up. And it has transformed this part of San Francisco, as a matter of fact, with some very good visitation. So please see it in person, because it's a very vivid thing. Secondarily, I do again want to say Marcy Wong's name. Her office is a partner to myself and Everardo on this endeavor. So a very strong architectural firm who couldn't be here today, but I want to make sure that they're well announced. So thank you. And I think lastly, I mean, it is a federal historic preservation tax credit project, and we worked very closely with the Office of Historic Preservation, and I consider them partners and collaborators in each of these endeavors, in particular in the industrial heritage endeavors. So thanks to the OHB.
All right. The next award takes us to the other side of the San Francisco Bay, to the city of Richmond, where Rooted in Richmond Tour Project developed an application that uses smart device technology to highlight 16 historic sites located along the Richmond Greenway. Rooted in Richmond is accessible in English and Spanish on Android and Apple devices and through a website, ensuring that interested folks who don't have access to mobile devices can still learn about the history of the city. The multimedia tour provides the story of Richmond as told by residents, historians, and notable civic leaders, with the added benefit of engaging tour users in the healthy activities of walking and biking. The tour is divided into 3 segments of about 2 miles each. The Persistence and Perseverance segment touches on the city's, the city's commercial development and struggles for economic and social equity. The Cultural Expression segment explores the rich, diverse art and cultural life of the city. And the Home, Health, Growth, and Justice segment spotlights Richmond's leading role in pioneering industry and healthcare, as well as civic and environmental justice. Images, video, oral histories, and 3D renderings of select artifacts enrich the tour narrative and highlight the history and diversity of Richmond's neighborhoods at each of the tour stops. Community engagement and input was strong, ensuring the tour accurately reflected the history and stories residents most wanted recognized and told. For demonstrating how historic preservation, presented in a multi-technical format, can engage residents and visitors with the historic places and unique character and heritage of a community, the Rooted in Richmond Tour Project is well deserving of a 2023 Governor's Historic Preservation Award.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lena Velasco. I'm the Director of Community Development for the City of Richmond, and we thank you all for this honor. And also want to acknowledge we have Councilmember Bana, our Historic Preservation Commissioners, Michael Himna, as well as Caitlin Himna. We really want to take the time to thank OHP through the Certified Local Government grant that we received made this project possible. Also want to acknowledge Jonathan Haber, who's one of our commissioners, who was the project lead on this project, along with Jonalyn Wales, who was also a staff planner who supported the efforts, and certainly the Richmond Museum of History that provided a lot of the photography, and the Richmond residents that really shared their stories that we're able to tell through the app. Our consultant as well that created the app for us, and just really wanted to thank you all for this honor, and look forward to doing more projects in the future.
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge the commissioners. They did the most important job, actually, applying for the grant and most of the work. Do you want to say something? And this acknowledgement actually helps us to get a bit more budget from the city. So we really appreciate the acknowledgement.
All right. I do think great credit goes to John Haber for totally spearheading all of this. He kept the 7 commissioners organized and in line and working on the content. Many of us wrote pieces of this. We had community members that all contributed, and I think it's turned into a really cool, multifaceted, technology-based history thing. And I would encourage everyone to come to Richmond or explore it from your couch, because you can do that online. But come to Richmond, ride your bike, walk, drive, check out these cool historic sites. I think it really highlights the fact that Richmond's more than just home front World War II history, which you hear of the most, and which is very interesting as well, but the app has sites from Native American history, Japanese American history, African American history. We've even got a little bit of modern environmentalism movement history, so it shows Richmond in a much broader perspective, and I think that's cool. So thank you.
Thank you.
Along with the preservation projects, such as the 2 just recognized, California is also home to a number of organizations equally dedicated to the cause of preserving our state's heritage. We recognize 3 of those organizations, starting with the next award recipient, San Diego Save Our Heritage Organization, or SOHO. SOHO was originally formed in 1969 to save a single home, the 1887 Sherman Gilbert House. From that successful effort by a small group of concerned citizens, SOHO has grown to be one of the larger organizations of its kind in the country. It has played a pivotal role in preserving and protecting dozens of historic sites and resources in the San Diego region, including the Gas Lamp Quarter, Santa Isabel Store, Marston House Museum and Gardens, Temple Beth Israel, and the Hotel del Coronado. In late 2007, SOHO was recognized for its efforts to monitor historic resources and prepare assessments during and after the San Diego firestorms earlier that year. SOHO actively engages and educates the public in the work and mission of historic preservation, and has campaigned to establish individual neighborhood preservation organizations. For years, through its magazine, Our Heritage, and now through an online newsletter, SOHO has provided guidance and increased public awareness and appreciation for the region's heritage. The organization's annual People and Preservation Awards, which celebrated its 40th anniversary in 2023, has recognized local preservation efforts by over 400 individuals, businesses, and organizations. For its 5 decades of dedicated work to ensure that the collective heritage of the San Diego region remains strong and celebrated, Save Our Heritage organization is presented with a 2023 Governor's Historic Preservation Award. Unfortunately, a representative from Soho was unable to be with us today, so we'll accept the award on their behalf and send it on to them. So, thank you. Education and preservation are very much a part of the work of our next organization award, the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation. In operation for 26 years, Palm Springs Preservation Foundation has been on the forefront of educating about and preserving the architectural resources and heritage of Palm Springs and the Coachella Valley. The Foundation's members and all volunteer board of directors actively advocate for the preservation and designation of significant homes, commercial buildings, historic districts, and local landmarks. Successes include properties such as the Capture Plaza, formerly the Taquits Plaza, the Villa Roma Garden Homes, Sinatra Twin Palms Estate, and Wexler Residence. The breadth of the Foundation's preservation mission is further enhanced through its educational programming, including publications that raise awareness of local building styles, architects, designers, and master builders. As a co-founder of Modernism Week, Palm Springs Preservation Foundation contributes to the twice-yearly event, sponsoring a free lecture series. The Foundation also conducts house tours all year long of historically and architecturally significant residences throughout the Coachella Valley. Other outreach efforts include a grant program to support preservation and architectural research and projects, and sponsorship of major Palm Springs Art Museum exhibits, with periods of free public admission, a stipulation of the Foundation's support. Since 2007, the Foundation has offered free membership as a public benefit, broadening its outreach to almost 3,000 individuals and families throughout the region and beyond. For its continuing dedication to preserving and celebrating the architectural and cultural heritage of Palm Springs and the Coachella Valley, the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation is presented with the 2023 Governor's Historic Preservation Award.
My name is Stephen Keel, and I'm Vice President of the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation. And on behalf of my colleagues who are so passionate and work so hard for this organization, thank you so much. We just came off of Modernism last week, which is an 11-day marathon of tours and lectures and parties. So if you haven't been, I really encourage you to do that. It's a lot of fun, and you'll learn quite a lot too. But it also, through these tours and things, we're able to raise a lot of money. And for example, in the last year, we have donated $200,000 to the Palm Springs Art Museum as they begin to educate the public about Albert Frey, one of the local architects. They brought back the Illuminaire House, a really important demonstration house from 1931, and they're building that on the Palm Springs Art Museum's parking lot. And also we helped fund the Palm Springs Art Museum's exhibition on Albert Frey, which was curated by Brad Dunning. So thank you so much. I invite you all to Palm Springs and hope to see you, and thank you.
The third organization award recognizes the California Garden and Landscape History Society for its work in preservation and educating the public about California's many and diverse cultural landscapes and gardens. Established 28 years ago, the California Garden and Landscape History Society's mission and work is founded on the belief that people will protect a landscape heritage they have come to understand and appreciate. To promote that understanding, the Society offers access to its quarterly journal, Eden, at no cost to the public. Eden is highly respected for its expertly researched cultural landscape histories and is a go-to resource for researchers, landscape architects, historians, students, and others. The Society's annual conferences and tours and talks program connect people directly to the features, beauty, and value of California's landscapes. Society lectures focus on a range of topics and on the known and lesser known places throughout the state. Webinars and how-to preservation workshops help to cultivate a wider appreciation and knowledge of the diversity of gardens and cultural landscapes throughout the state. In addition to programming, the Society works collaboratively with other organizations and agencies, partnering on advocacy efforts such as halting the destruction of the Hannah Carter Japanese Garden in Los Angeles, and preserving the home and garden of landscape architect Lockwood DeForest. The California Garden and Landscape History Society is modest in size with only 300 members and a volunteer board, yet it has achieved success in raising awareness and support for the preservation of California's garden and landscape heritage. It is an organization well deserving of a 2023 Governor's Historic Preservation Award.
Guess I'm going alone. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Keith Park, and I'm the current president of the California Garden and Landscape History Society, and it is an immense pleasure to accept this award. I want to thank everybody who has nominated us, done the work. I want to especially thank our working board. As was mentioned, we are a volunteer board and composed of people who are nothing but passionate and dedicated to the landscapes and culture and history of California's rich landscape history. I want to thank also our editor of Eden, because amongst the things that CGLHS does, our events, our talks, our tours, our annual conferences, Eden is perhaps, our journal is one of our most forward-facing products. And if you haven't checked it out, I highly encourage you to go to cglhs.org and look up some of the past issues of Eden. It has come light years since it's first started almost 30 years ago, all thanks to our editor, Stephen Keelan. And with that, would anybody like to say anything else?
We just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I think Keith mentioned that we're a volunteer board, and it's an incredibly hardworking board, and we always refer to ourselves as the little engine that could, because Eden is as he said, a very special publication. And we began with really just a mimeographed two-sheet newsletter, and now we're a full-color layout magazine that's published quarterly. And our conferences are spread out all over California. Each year we pick a place that is maybe not so well recognized. Sometimes it's well recognized, but many of them are not. And so people get a chance to visit places and experience the place for a couple of days with the opportunity to hear lecturers and go and see places on the ground. So we think it's a very special organization and urge you all to look us up. Thank you.
We close our award presentation with the Aha Mutatai Traditional Cultural Property Evaluation Report, an endeavor that addresses the significance of landscapes and the cultural and spiritual heritage bound up in these lands. The Aha Mutatai Traditional Cultural Property consists of an ethnographic landscape that encompasses approximately 30,670 acres of predominantly undeveloped land in the Laguna Mountains of San Diego County, California. As a sacred landscape, Aha Mutatai is important to several groups that develop strong connections to certain areas and natural and cultural resources on and around the mountain. Descendants of the ancient peoples carry on the ceremonial knowledge, commemorations, and cultural practices on Aha Mutatai, which continue to teach and impact the lives of indigenous peoples. The 354-page Traditional Cultural Property Report represents a successful collaboration between public agencies, scientists, and the California Indian communities that preserves within its pages cultural knowledge invaluable to present and future generations of the Kumeyaay people and other tribes of the Laguna Mountain region. The report was a monumental effort, taking several years to complete and including several lines of evidence documenting the indigenous connections and enduring cultural significance of the property. Contributors to the effort included GIS specialists, anthropologists, archaeologists, and most importantly, the input and voices of the Manzanita Band of the Kumeyaay Nation, La Posta Band of Mission Indians, Awiapop Band of Kumeyaay Indians, Kwaimi, Hamul Indian Village, and the Viejas Band of Kumeyaay Indians. The primary voice that informed this study originated from the Kwaimi, the only remaining band still residing within the traditional cultural property. The collaborative, multidisciplinary, and tribal-centered approach of this project serves as an innovative model for the evaluation and management of cultural landscapes. The Aha Mutatai Traditional Cultural Property Evaluation Report is presented with a 2023 Governor's Historic Preservation Award.
Good afternoon. As you can see, I'm as old as Methuselah. So I'm hard of hearing. My eyesight is failing. So I guess you probably have all figured that out. I don't mind telling people that getting old is a pitch. Whoever said your last years are your golden years didn't live long enough to know what that was all about. And somebody once said that youth is wasted on the young. I think I would agree with that. So that's not why we're here today. We're here so that I may say thank you to the governor for this opportunity. More important, as a California Indian, I do want to extend my gratitude to the governor for recognizing the history of the genocide of the California Indians and apologizing for that and the legislation that was stupid enough to support the annihilation of us. As you can see, we're a bloodline of strong tenacity. We're still here. We're still going to remind everybody that California was never ceded. Our treaties were never ratified. So I don't mind saying in my old age, California still belongs to the California Indians. So I have a few notes here, if you'll bear with me. I hope to convey a message to you that I think as Americans is terribly important. I think it's terribly important that we remember our history, who we are, and where we've come from. So with that in mind, I would like to say to you that growing up on my ancestors' land, my homeland, the Laguna Mountains, San Diego, California, has developed in me an understanding of the essence of place and how important it is that these small little places of pristine value continue to be preserved and protected. And when we're pushed to the wall for development, they must be put to record. It's history, it's correct history, so that people understand we do not live without the natural elements of this world. So we are people of the land. Our blood is in this land. Our bones are in this land. The minerals within our bodies are the same minerals within the bodies of the earth. So we have a right to speak out and to stand for that. So I kind of wanted to share that thought with you, and I'd also like to say for anybody who does not know, and you may not like this, but it has been said, one of the darkest episodes in American history is the devastation of the native Indians to their population, their bloodline, the traditional cultural places, and the loss and desecration of Mother Earth. So I wanted to put that to record because I do think it's important we remember that. I do think it's important to remember that we are a part of that earth and that the earth is alive. You must remember, or I like people to remember, if you're going to engage in preservation in California, you must know the California Indian history. It's an ugly one, but in that ugliness comes value. I've been told, and I believe it, that in your darkest days of your lifetime is when you gain your greatest knowledge. You may not recognize that right away, but 10 years, 20 years, you'll be thankful for that hardship, because it's that hardship that teaches you something. So it is with the California Indians. And it's important that I also tell you that I don't speak for the Indian community collectively. I'm standing here as one little Indian in explaining to you or trying to share with you how terribly important this award is. It's not about Carmen Lucas. It is about the history of the California Indians. It is about Maria Alto. It is about Susana Calich. It is about Tom Lucas. It is about this team of varied disciplines that were willing enough to come together and to work with us. Even though we may have different philosophies, we're able to communicate with each other and create a document as difficult and as many years as it took to stand here and be acknowledged by the state of California and the governor on behalf of the Indians, on behalf of my ancestors, and the Kumeyaay people of San Diego, California, because it is a joint used landscape. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Susan Hector, who in the beginning with her work at SDG&E, the San Diego Gas and Electric Company, put in a requirement that if traditional cultural properties are recognized within the surveys of a project, that they should be documented and come forward to the record. So it was with that dream and desire to recognize that history that we were able to do that. And I searched my soul as one little Indian, because I know some people have continued to say, you don't tell them anything. You know, we still hold this historic anger that comes from our history of genocide. That's in our DNA, I'm told. I don't know if that's true or not, but I hold that anger. So you have to control that, which is what I try to do. And I recognize we're in different times. But because of that, when we go to these cultural resources that are so sacred, it's my duty as one little Indian to offer up a prayer, because I believe in the lingering spirits and I understand how that complicates an issue. And all I can say is I can't help what the modern society does, but I can offer a prayer and ask for their forgiveness, because we must get rid of our hatred if we're to go forward and have any unity or any happiness at all. So that's that understanding that I'm willing to share what little I know from my own cultural background with people that are willing to hear it. If I've had any success in my life, it has been this lady, Courtney Ann Coyle, who is my attorney, who has helped us in the legal aspect of bringing this document together. It has been the help of, where's Rachel? Rachel Rustin from the SDG&E, willingness to work with us. And it's Nick, where did you go? You can't miss him. Yeah, I told you I was hard to see, and I can't even see him when they're 10 feet away from me. So Nick, who has been a young man that I've worked with since he got out of school, and he's elevated his craft to where he creates a lot of good maps and was able to do that for us. This young man is starting to get crow's feet. He's my boss. Believe it or not, we've been working together for 17 years, and he's had to put up with me, but they have all believed in what we're saying. I'd also like to comment on Heather Thompson, who is not here today, but she was a part of this team in the beginning and did some research, and I want to acknowledge that. So I would also like to acknowledge and tell you in your presence is the chairwoman from La Posta and her husband, Ed. They head up the Gray Wolf Native American Monitoring Company that has been very successful. So it is all these young archaeologists and young Native American monitors that help bring information together and help us to put one little story. The Kumeyaay people believe that the traditional cultural landscape for us runs from the Pacific Ocean to the Colorado River. And in fact, it does. So when we talk about Laguna Mountain, we're only talking about a part of that whole. So it was important that the rest of the community support us on this. So I thank you for your presence. I hope I haven't talked too much. Would any of you like to add? And I will only say one more thing that I think is terribly important. The essence of place and the intangible aspect of the universe in which we live. You can climb up in that sky where we flew in this morning, covered with clouds. If you were up there without the plane, you could grab a handful of that cloud and I'd ask you how much you have. It is real, but you can't take it away from you. So that's the same essence of place. There's a certain feeling, an emotional feeling that comes when you visit these places that are still of sacredness, significance to us. So I hope that that plants a seed in your collective consciousness to where we can work together as human beings to keep some of our landscape in its pristine condition and yet enjoy it and yet learn from it. And don't forget that's very important to the animals as well. So I thank you very much.
Congratulations again to all the award recipients, and thank you, Carmen, for those beautiful words and for always bringing us back to what's so important is tradition, culture, and community. Whether you just arrived in California or your ancestors have been here for time immemorial. We cannot conclude the day without recognizing the contributions of people who worked throughout the year to service the program. I'd like to thank Eric Bianchini and Alex in the back for delivering the awards to the world for us. Thank you so much for joining us today. To Jody Brown of our staff, thank you, Jody. Armando, thank you always for being with us and for your constant support. And finally, I leave Brian Baird of State Parks is always here to help us with photography and making sure that we can capture this day for everyone to share. But finally, I'd like to just ask you, Diane, can you please stand up to join me in thanking Diane Barkley, who is the heart of this program. Diane works tirelessly to make this seamless and bring these awards to us every year. We thank you so much, Diane. I just wanted to say that, again, it's my distinct honor to be your State Historic Preservation Officer, and today always reminds me of why we work so hard on your behalf. I invite you to join us in consultations, let us know how we're doing, and always we're so happy to have you sharing in the wonderful successes of all your work to preserve California. Thank you so much.